So, another another review. This time I'm doing Salt and Sanctuary, which is a game that was recently ported from the PS4 to the PC in the vein of the Dark Souls series. I was pretty excited for it when I first saw it a while back, and I finally got my hands on it, since I refused to buy a $400 Bloodborne machine. Let's go ahead and jump into this one, kids. As always, first up, graphics. This game could be quite pretty, but for some fucking ridiculous reason, the company that made it decided they would rather cover up everything they've done with 100 filters from Photoshop and throw a vignette around the edges of the screen to simulate what it would be like to die at the bottom of a well. When I could see shit, it looked pretty cool if a bit rudimentary, but enemies blend into the background and they threw in a bullshit gimmicky torch mechanic that was more frustrating than it was immersive. I understand wanting to make your game have a dark or bleak aesthetic, but this just lets you simulate what I imagine it must be like to be colorblind. Level design. Surprisingly excellent. Things are evenly spaced out enough to where they give you that rat's nest feeling that the first Dark Souls gave us, trudging up and down what seems to be like a completely different location, only to wind up in a place we've already been to without realizing it. Areas are interesting enough the first time through, but all sort of feel like a generic The Dark Fantasy game, colored by numbers at times. We get the castle, we get the bleak forest, we get the bleak forestier than that. The platforming is pretty tight, but there were a few spots that either annoyed the piss out of me or just felt like lazy programming. Performance. It was shit every time I'd record at first, but I'm a retarded person who hadn't upgraded his drivers in a bit. So I did that, and it stayed pretty well above 60 frames per second. I would occasionally crash to desktop when I tabbed out to do something, or I'd have the occasional hiccup here and there, but overall I can't really bitch. Combat and controls. Occasionally frustrating and clunky, the control scheme is sort of a water-headed baby between Dark Souls and Metroidvanias of old. I've played Dark Souls recently, so I kept trying to attack with the triggers and using items or rolling at inopportune times, but once I got used to it worked out fine. Combat felt like the area where they most tried to channel the Souls series and failed. Rolling seemed to do almost nothing, even when it was well-timed. A weapon's reach seemed to make more of a difference than its stats, and it sort of pigeonholed you into using massive swords over almost anything else. Boss fights seemed to mirror Dark Souls almost one for one, but lacked the nuance that made them good. Most bosses just sort of swing wildly and speed up as they lose health, meaning that you spend your time blocking or rolling as much as possible, making it hard to get hits in. I found the best strategy once a boss got down to around 30% health was to just swing wildly and heal whenever I got low on health, since there was no longer a breathing period once you'd successfully dodged a series of attacks. Any situation where button mashing is not only possible, but preferable, there's a pretty clear design flaw. This might sound like it makes the game more difficult, and it does, but it also makes deaths feel cheap and artificial, and the fights overall feel underwhelming. Class progression and leveling. It's a sphere grid. Games really suck the dick off of sphere grids after Final Fantasy X. It's not the worst leveling system, but I found myself having to take a bunch of points into bullshit I didn't even want in order to get a thing that I did, and sphere grids are the least shitty when you instead have to make difficult decisions with the points that you have. Also, you level with salt, which gives you something that you use to pop into the sphere grid to get a thing. I feel like they didn't think this one through all the way. Overall, I give Salt and Sanctuary a 3. 3 things out of some number of things. Get the fuck out of here.